You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show. Focus on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
And welcome to this edition of Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host, Richard Franzi, and this is podcast episode number 1037. And ooh, do we have a good one planned for you today. Did you know that research shows business success is highly dependent on the success and contributions of the people? And it is not just a matter of education, training, and experience? I've invited the CEO of Alpha Quantix, Robert Curtis, and his team, well, just he's coming today, to talk about helping businesses be the best they can be by providing analytics and metrics to keep managers focused on their people's AQ, which is alpha qualities. Welcome to Critical Mass Radio Show.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's awesome. Ever since we met and you showed me what you were doing, interesting backstory. I have monthly peer group meetings at the Center Club, and one day I was to have a monthly meeting there, and lo and behold, in the space we were competing for was Bob. You were supposed to have a meeting there as well.
They double booked us.
And
you were so kind as to
throw you
offer it up. No, actually, quite the contrary.
Just
offered it up, relocated, and it actually made everything for better for both of us.
Awesome. So, and when I did a little bit more background, I said, I got to have you on the show. So the audience that we're talking to are middle market CEOs and business owners, presidents, general managers running companies with $5 to $100 million in revenue across North America. So let's keep our conversation targeted at that audience. Can we?
That's a great target because that's who I do business with.
Okay, perfect then. So let's start with a kind of professional story, something from your background. Give us a little context for who you are.
Sure. I've been around a little while, and I've had a few good experiences over time. And one of them, I suppose, that kind of introduced me to the upper-level management world was a CEO appointment at a circuit board manufacturer and assembly here in Orange County. Several years back, I came and took over in a kind of an interesting situation where what we needed to do was kind of clean things up, get things in good shape to market and exit on the company. And so I helped with that. It took a few years, and I learned a lot from that. And that was an interesting role for me to play, and I really enjoyed it. And so I leveraged that. A couple of years later, I started another company. I founded my own company. And it was an offshoring document processing operation in Costa Rica, located in Costa Rica. I set up shop down there. Basically my sales and front office was here in Irvine. I also had a Dallas office at one point in time. But our back office was document processing. We were hiring lawyers and professional people down in Costa Rica who were obviously bilingual and processing documents for the subprime mortgage lending industry.
So that was you.
It's not all my fault.
Hey, we were ground zero here in Orange County, and you're here.
I know. Well, I mean, I was at ground zero, essentially. But it helped, actually, to build the business. It actually took off, to be perfectly honest, along with the industry.
Right place, the right time.
Right place, the right time,
awesome.
Right focus. I mean, we had, 4 out of the top 10 subprime mortgage lenders as our clients, all the names. New Century, Option One, IndyMac, all those names.
I remember those names.
Yeah, and we were doing great business with them. And it was just an amazing experience. It was a great wild ride. I mean, we were growing at incredible multiples and adding people left and right, and it taught me a lot about entrepreneurship, management, and all those principles. And now I'm on my third, essentially, reinvention or reincarnation, and I'm working with this. And it gives me an opportunity to apply some of the things I've learned in the prior.
So let's talk about this, Bob Curtis. This is Alpha Quantix.
Right.
So first of all, explain the name.
Okay. Well, it's basically a combination of the two things we do. We focus on alphas. We focus on finding people's alpha qualities and working with their alpha qualities, what we call their alpha qualities. And then we also want to quantify that, and we want to measure it and try to improve upon it in any way we can. So what are alphas? What are alpha qualities?
Yeah, what are alpha qualities?
We're looking at behavioral characteristics, the aptitudes, and various other components that employees and managers can bring to a business, and also the business as a whole. And so what we're trying to do is match the focus of the business, the goals of the business, whether it's on a longer-term strategic or a tactical kind of agenda, and try to match those with what we can learn about the employees on a granular basis and how we can deploy them, redeploy them, train them, and make them more efficient and more productive.
And what tools, assessments, diagnostics?
Yeah,
what's this built on?
A variety of tools. But the core of it is essentially the behaviorals, cognitives, and other tools to assess the potential.
Okay.
And the aptitudes and the drives and motivations behind people.
And this is appropriate for lower middle market companies, the $5 to $100 million companies?
Absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, some of the primary solutions we work with are geared toward those markets. They have special arrangements and focuses for everything from franchise operations all the way up to global companies. But we start with 50 employees and up, essentially.
So we're talking with Bob Curtis. He is CEO, founder. Are you founder
yes.
of Alpha Quantix? And so human capital, most important, right? We understand.
Yeah. Everybody understands that.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds, but it makes sense. Especially a smaller company where you have less employees, you really need them to be contributing at a high level.
Mm-hmm. Well, it actually, interestingly enough, smaller companies is very important. But one of the difference between a smaller and a mid-sized company is that the smaller company, essentially the manager or founder, especially like in my case with my company, you're hands-on. You've hand-selected the people. You're working with them on a day-to-day basis. You know them, and you can work with them, and you can learn about them, and really have a direct involvement. The problems start to come in when you get to the second layer, when you add that middle level. And when you have to communicate and reach goals that are defined by upper management and the owners, and you have to get that message down and work with the ground troops.
Right.
And the problem is that you start building more and more of a gap.
Right. And then what do you do?
Well, then you got to work.
Then what do you do?
Then you really have to work on
stress,
you have to work on your management skills.
Is it your experience that by making this investment in the people, that the people's engagement changes the level of engagement they have with their employer? Do you have any data?
Absolutely. I mean, I could, we can go through the numbers, and there's a lot of different ways to measure a lot of this, and whether it's turnover, engagement,
right.
Culture, and there's a lot of assessment tools out there and various other things, kind of like what we offer. But the difference being that what we try to do is focus on the granular, getting down to the individual employee and getting the managers, the middle management, and as far up as possible, knowing and understanding what will reduce the turnover, increase the retention, work with the engagement and improve the engagement and improve the culture. But it all depends on the specific goals and what is the focus of the company at that time.
Does your process and your assessments and metrics, does it help to make sure you optimize people in the right positions as well?
Absolutely.
Can you help me understand that a little bit then?
Okay. You want me to give you a case story, or you want to?
Do you have one?
Yeah, I have a quick one. As a matter of fact, I was just
we love stories here on Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast.
Okay. So I went into a tech company, Silicon Valley company a year ago, and they were asking me questions, and we were talking about their sales force, and they had one person who should have been a tremendous performer within the organization, highly intelligent, very bright, very motivated. As a matter of fact, the gentleman had already gone to law school and achieved a lot prior. But it turned out he wasn't performing as expected. So we actually took a look at him, tried to figure out what would be the best situation, where he was coming from, and what his aptitudes and what his drives were. And after a little bit of discussion, and not much time, and effort with the inside sales manager, we turned around and said, wait a second, this guy might be better for contract renewals and continuing contract engagements, not out there beating the pavement trying to find opening the new doors.
Wow.
And sure enough, we repositioned him, and he's a great success. He's really good at doing that.
Wow, that's a happy ending to what could have been an unpleasant situation, right?
You've got it.
All right, so we're going to take our first and only break here on Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast. I hope you will listen. It only lasts for like 30 seconds, and loyal listeners know that. Bob, when we come back, I want you to define what are alpha qualities. So can we talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely.
All right, you don't want to go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be right back after this word from me.
Richard Franzi is a highly sought-after keynote speaker on topics of interest to CEOs of middle firms across North America. Richard's talks include Killing Cats Leads to Rats, a fascinating look at how unintended consequences of CEOs' decisions impact their firm's performance. Your Gray Matter Matters, which explores how a CEO's mindset can differentiate a middle market firm and define its culture. Richard delivers talks to a variety of audiences, ranging from executive team retreats to keynotes in front of hundreds of CEOs. To learn more about his talks, visit criticalmassforbusiness.com and select the contact page or call 949-887-4104.
Welcome back to this edition of Critical Mass Radio. I know it's time to come back on air. An engineer's pointing at me like scoldingly. But anyway, welcome back to Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host, Richard Franzi. This is live radio on octalkradio.net. You know, all of our shows can be heard anytime on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and many other podcasting platforms. Several hundred guests' websites have also placed their show, where we've had their CEO on the show. They put it on their website somewhere. And since we started this program in 2009, our show's reached several 100,000 listeners with our live stream, our podcasts, and the other platforms that we use. Simply type in these 4 words, Critical Mass Radio Show, into your favorite podcasting software, and you'll be able to automatically receive our weekly shows. This week here on octalkradio.net, we're doing 4 live interviews. Most weeks we do 2, and so you'll get 2 great interviews with interesting guests each week by subscribing to Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast. All right, Bob Curtis, before the break, I said I was going to ask you to define in a little more detail what are these mysterious alpha qualities you've been talking about?
Well, okay, alpha qualities are our way of describing what it works the best and can work the best for your people in the right circumstances and in the organization. Basically, another little story. I can now give you a little background. I am a father. I have relatively young kids. And I can speak from experience now. We all come out different when we start out different, right?
Right.
And you know that as a parent. But literally from day one, you can tell and see and understand that we're all coming from a different perspective, a different point. We have different drives and motivations. Okay, so the idea is to find out at the very roots, what are those for every person within the organization, and understand how those impact and can be used, and the company can benefit from those inherent drives. And it's not that all certain people are exactly tailored for a position. Nobody is. But the fact is you can work with those and you can capitalize upon those. And we call those essentially our alpha qualities, what makes us an alpha within the organization or the enterprise.
Okay. So can't you just ask me, and can I just tell you as an employee?
Well, in a sense, we do. We have to. The only way we can find out what your alpha, what your drives are and your behaviors and your cognitive skills, the only way we're going to do that is by asking you a lot of questions and trying to figure that out. But the idea is to understand the response and to understand what the person is telling us, and then take that down to the root level and get beyond our ordinary behavior, our ordinary, biases, prejudices, whatever they might be, our preferences or our goals even. We want to understand the person at the root.
Okay.
And once we understand the person at the root, we can help them develop from there.
I was sort of being jesting a little bit with you, because I think you can't just ask people verbally, right? You can't say, Bob, tell me, and get an accurate. You really need these honed assessments that are able to get at what people really have as their alpha qualities, right?
Oh, exactly. And I was kind of being facetious with my response.
Right.
The fact is, we do. We're when we ask a question, when we're doing the assessments and the surveys and the various other things we do, we're actually trying to dig a lot deeper. Everybody knows that. And we're trying to do it in a scientific way, in ways that we know that based upon certain responses, that those are indicators of very important things. And, in certain circumstances, we're going to look for certain indicators. Some others we're not. And what we'll do is we'll take what we get and make the best of it.
I'm a believer in positive psychology. I think the people that listen to the radio show understand that. They also know that I'm a fan of Gallup's Strength Finder assessment, because I believe in companies, the most gain that you can get is by having people do what they do best more often and remediate what they don't do well, or have it delegated to somebody else. A lot of times in the corporate world, we think your most gain comes from fixing what you don't do well, which becomes a painful and unpleasant experience many times for the employees. It sounds like in your role, I think there's what you do for companies, there's a similarity there with your alpha qualities, is really finding where I am a superstar potential as an employee and allowing me to use my best qualities to the betterment of the company.
Exactly, and we work mostly we're certified partners with a company called Predictive Index. We do
Yes.
a lot of their work with them.
Okay.
We also do work with other providers of different kinds of assessments and tools.
Uh-huh.
But Predictive Index is a major influence on what we do, and they are very similar in the sense to Gallup, in the sense that they're looking at the individual drives, the individual motivators, the strength of those motivators, the decision-making factors, and various other things that come in. And the idea is to be as efficient and effective and scientific about the approach to it as you can, and to really understand the person so you really get an accurate read, and then you can understand where to go from there.
Do you find that the companies that you work with that help that move their employees in this direction, that they light a fire maybe in people that they hadn't seen? You gave us an example before the break of an individual who might have been on the way out but then found his niche and is doing well. But I mean, do you find that the employee population gets ignited through these?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I could give you stories on that too, left and right. But but one, for example, is an entrepreneur that I was working with about a year and a half ago, a security guard company, and he started out, and he's very entrepreneurial, very free spirit, looking for the new challenges, doesn't want repetition. But the problem is he started a security guard company, a contract security guard company, placing people in Costco's and Targets and banks and places like that. And he had reached a level where he just realized he was very different than the people he was hiring, and very different than the structure of the organization and the kind of communication that the organization needed. And so we came in and we worked with him, and we helped him and gave him some guidance on how to communicate, how to work with the people, and how to select the people who would be appropriate in the various levels of the organization. And you know what? He became even more ecstatic. He's naturally a bright guy and very motivated, but he actually, it ramped him up a whole nother level, because now he understood how to actually effectively manage and deal with and communicate with his people, and it made a difference.
And sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, but sometimes that can be the most draining aspect of a business, is the people management element of it.
Oh yeah, I that from my prior experiences, the tech company, and also then later an offshore contract company with cultural differences, because I was dealing with Costa Ricans. The fact is, I am naturally, inherently, a task-oriented person. You give me a goal, you give me a task, give me the tools to do it, and I will find a logical and very efficient way to accomplish that. The problem is, I'm one of those guys that sits at in the conference room table, and I know exactly how to make it work, and I know exactly how to that it's supposed to come out. And so it's very frustrating for me to sit around a conference room table and listen to a bunch of other people with their opinions, because from my perspective, I've already figured it out. Right. And so, for me, this is an evolution. The Costa Rica experience was amazing. We had to grow so fast. We had to hire different people from different cultural backgrounds, different language backgrounds, and we had to incorporate and figure out how to deal with them. And it was very, very challenging for me, to be perfectly honest.
I would think.
If I had these tools at the time, and I love the fact that I have them now and I can offer them to other people.
So do you find that your experience as CEO and founder and entrepreneur is valuable to your clients today who are doing business with you, because you walked in their shoes?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think so. And it's different, though. Everybody's coming from a different perspective. And some people are walking in a more corporate structured environment, and sometimes I encounter that, and I have to learn from them. And they have their own challenges.
Right.
But especially for the mid-sized businesses and the entrepreneurs who've reached that level, I've been there.
Okay. So let's help our audience to learn more about what your company does. So, Bob, online, where would you suggest they go to learn more about your firm?
Well, first, our website is alphaquantix.com. You're
going to spell that.
Yeah, exactly. It's with an X on the end.
Okay.
ALPHAQUANTIX.
Okay, I was trying to write that down, but you need to do it again.
Okay. ALPHAQUANTIX. .com. And then also we're on Instagram as Alpha Quantix. And we also do periodic business roundtables, local here in Orange County, as well as webinars to educate people and just introduce them to what we do and how we do it.
Where does your customer base reside?
It's national.
Okay, so you're where within the sound of the voice, as long as you're in the U.S.?
I have clients all the way from just a little local credit union to all the way to BMW North America and all across the country.
Awesome. Well, I've been excited to have you on the program since I first met you and we started talking and I learned what you do. I think it's been fascinating. Thanks for being a friend of the program and a part of the critical mass community.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've enjoyed it.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
And I'd like to thank our engineer yet again, Mr. Paul Roberts. Our three producers are Joan Park, Crystal Nunley and Haley Stern. If you'd like to connect with me on social media, my Twitter handle is simple, CEO Peer Groups. On LinkedIn and YouTube, I'm Richard Franzi, Franzi, and my Facebook page is the same as our website, criticalmass4business.com. And until the next show, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.
You have been listening to Critical Mass Radio Show Business Talk Show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Almond Board of California. Did you know the almond community is working on new ways to recycle orchard co-products? Hulls and shells may create better plastics, fuel, and more. Grow what you know at almondsustainability.org.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. First responders on the streets of Mexico City today ordering people out of buildings in the aftermath of a magnitude 7.1 earthquake that struck around midday. Mexico's federal government has boosted the death toll there to more than 100, though the full extent of loss of life and damage is not yet known. Greg Berger is a professor and journalist at the Autonomous University in the state of Morelos and describes the scene.
Some of the oldest buildings in the region are here, and they have a lot of damage. The local capilla, the local chapel, its tower is leaning over, about to fall off, and lots of the streets are cordoned off.
Video on social media shows buildings and parts of buildings collapsed. The quake was centered about 76 miles southeast of Mexico City. Today's earthquake comes on the anniversary of a 1985 quake that hit Mexico, killing thousands. After causing devastation in the Caribbean islands of Dominica and Guadeloupe, Hurricane Maria is closing in on Puerto Rico with 165-mile-an-hour winds. NPR's Greg Allen reports Puerto Rico's governors warned residents to prepare for the